Hey, Streetwalkers. I've been telling Steve for years, you need to put out the best episodes again so people can relive the thrill of the best ones, the ones that are really, really art. But that's almost all of them, isn't it, Streetwalkers? But this month, March 2024, you're going to get to hear my picks. Here we go.
I'm a fireball.
Hey, Streetwalkers. Number 9 of Shawn's picks. It's Rachel Dolezal, part 2. I like this one even better. I did read her book in between the first one and the second one. She autographed a copy for me. I got really into her Instagram page. She is an amazing woman who has, in my opinion, been really unfairly judged and mistreated by the American public. But hey, listen and decide for yourself. The second time that Steve interviewed Rachel. Number 9, Rachel Dolezal, right here on Fascination Street podcast.
Fireball.
This is Rachel Dolezal, and you're listening to Fascination Street podcast.
Welcome back to Fascination Street podcast. Rachel Dolezal, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I am wonderflonium. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a return appearance. Rachel was on, I believe it was, the episode came out January 6th of 2020. So that's been a minute, and you probably don't remember this, and nor should you. But at the very end of that episode, I said, is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about? And you said, yes, all kinds of stuff. But we could talk for a whole nother episode. So I waited 2 years and now we're back.
Sounds good.
So a lot has happened since we spoke, a lot in your life.
Yeah, and a lot in the world. I mean, January 2020, that was almost pre-pandemic. Maybe it was just getting going, but it hadn't really fully hit as far as schools being closed and all that kind of thing. And then we moved to Arizona in July of 2020. So yeah, just a lot of things have happened, I think, in everybody's life in the last couple of years. The last 2 years seem like 10 years or something like that. You know?
You're right. It was right before the pandemic got all buck wild. I mean, I guess it's COVID-19, so it started a couple of months before you were on. Yeah, it didn't get all buck wild until I think March.
Like March.
Yeah, I think it was March.
March is when schools closed. I mean, at the time we were in Washington State, and that was the first state, I think, to be shut down pretty heavily because it kind of spread really rapidly in the nursing homes on the west side of the state, but I was on the eastern side of the state. So we didn't even have COVID, but we were all shut down, you know, because those things happen statewide. Right. So yeah, it was crazy. I couldn't do hair for 2 months because no touch services. And so I had to really lean into my art, and it was a really interesting time.
I think the reason Washington shut down first is because, I mean, who knows? I mean, it seems like the news changes all the time, but from what I remember, the first case, like it came into the airport in, like, I don't know, Seattle or something. I think so.
Yeah.
So it probably hit there first and then spread, and then that's why y'all shut down.
Right. Because at that time, it was mostly concentrated in the elderly, or the elderly were seen as high risk because it hit a nursing home, and it was like 75% of the nursing home got COVID, and people weren't even able to see their relatives. And then it really got crazy from there. And then, of course, we came to learn that it could actually infect anyone and everyone, including people with autoimmune or immunocompromised systems or asthma or other things, you know, were at risk equally with the elderly. So as you know, I mean, we all walked through this journey of being week to week kind of jerked around, like what's happening now? You know, are we going back to school? Are we staying at home? And then my middle son, Franklin, was actually a senior. So he didn't have the high school graduation.
Oh, man.
It was like a drive-through where you pull up and he got out of the car and he got his diploma and he got back in the car and we drove off. And it was just such a bummer for him because he's one of those kids that loves the social stuff, you know, loves the social life, and, you know, was on the football team. And so he didn't get a prom. He was really looking for, he had his outfit all picked out for prom, didn't get to go to prom or get his final track season. So, you know, that was tough for him. And then we moved to Arizona, to Tucson, because he's going to University of Arizona here. Me and the little one moved with him just because we didn't know anybody in Arizona, and it seemed like he needed somebody here because all these wild cards going on with the pandemic of
right.
They're moving the kids into the dorms, but then they decided to have class online. So everybody was just like locked in the dorms, which was a really bad situation because, of course, COVID just spread crazy in the dorms. They were literally testing the cesspools of the dorms for COVID. I mean, it was just so bizarre. So then he ended up this year, his sophomore year, he's in person for the first time, but it's almost like the sophomores are freshmen all over again because it's their first time actually walking to classes and experiencing college. So it's like he had like 2 freshman years of college back to back in a way. So it's just been crazy. My oldest son got accepted to Sydney Law School in Australia, but he was actually doing his master's in England at the time that COVID hit. He did get back here safely, but he had to sit here for over a year waiting for the borders to open because they weren't accepting student visas in Australia. So he's finally there now because they just opened up student visas in January, the end of January. Their school year starts in February. So he just started law school, but was on hold for a year. It's just interesting to me how every individual and family has had an experience with COVID kind of remixing their life plans or careers or schooling or whatever.
Yeah, I think everybody, nobody knew what to expect, even the experts or whatever, but I think we all ended up having a very unique and individualistic experience with all of that. And I guess it's still going. Maybe it's ending. Who knows?
Actually here in Arizona, I just got an email yesterday from my 5-year-old, or he just turned 6. I'm still used to calling him 5. Langston's kindergarten, the public school is just going to optional masking starting Monday because it was a high risk or a high rate of transmission. Now it's like considered medium or low rates of COVID here in Pima County. So it is still happening, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I want to take the mask off for him because he has autism. Like if he gets used to something, he likes to keep it the same way. Right. Very structured. So I'm hesitant just because if they switch back, then it'll be harder. I'd rather just leave a mask on them until they're for sure not going to need it going into the future. So yeah, it's still hard for parents to make those judgment calls on what to do. Sure. Transitioning a bit away from COVID, like we all seem to be doing, maybe, hopefully. When we talked last time, I asked you why you still lived in that same area where the area just seemed really unkind to you. And I asked why you still live there. And it was because you had a kid who you couldn't leave yet because of a kid. Right. And then I look up a few months later and you moved. So did that kid turn whatever age and that's why you were able to move? Yeah, that was Franklin. He turned 18 and graduated high school. That's the law for Idaho. Seems very medieval or Middle Ages law, but in Idaho, children are considered property until they turn 18 and graduate high school. Property of the state? Property of the parents, joint property. So in a case of a divorce, I lived in Spokane, which was only 30 miles or 30 minutes from the Idaho border. So I could only move up to 30 miles from the courthouse where the divorce was finalized. I eventually moved to Spokane, but that was as far as I could go with him. Otherwise, I would have had to leave him behind in Idaho with his dad. And that's just not an option for me as a mother. So sure. Yeah, we moved here with him, moved to Tucson with Franklin. That was the whole holdup for us not being able to leave that area. And the reason why we moved here is also because of him, because this is where he chose to go to school. And I didn't have anywhere else to go, in the middle of a pandemic. So I thought, let's go there, be a support for him. And after we established domicile status, then of course he gets in-state tuition, which helps him out a lot now from his second year on. So yeah, I think it worked out. Yeah. And I think it's awesome that you went with him because you're kind of looking around, you're like, well, I'm free to go anywhere now because he's of age and I sure want to get the hell out of here. So let's go where he's going. Exactly. And trying to keep the kids together, because Langston was 4 and he loves his older brothers. And I didn't expect or anticipate at the time that Isaiah would also end up here for a year, but we are all 3 in Tucson for a whole year. And now he's back abroad, but that was the silver lining, in all of these things. Sometimes there's just a little silver lining that's unexpected. So it was really nice to have all 3 of my sons in the same place for a little while. Love it. So did you not have the same divorce restriction issue with Langston? I have only been married once. That was to Franklin's dad. Well, that's cool.
thank goodness you were able to not have, what was that, like another 12 years or whatever? That would have been terrible.
Yeah, that would have been terrible.
So how do you like Tucson?
I actually really love it here in terms of the climate. It's
way different than what you're used to, right? Because your whole life was in the Washington, Idaho area, right?
Well, I went to college
other than school,
and DC for grad school. But most of my life has been in a colder climate, and I've always hated the cold. Funny enough, even though I grew up in that area, it is just something about my body doesn't really love the cold. So I am so happy to not have to shovel snow, scrape ice, and just be able to not bundle up in winter coats and everything else going outside. I love the climate here. Absolutely. But it's also been a reminder that, some things will follow me forever in a national sense and maybe even an international sense, as far as people still kind of stigmatizing my name and recognizing me and things like that. I still have to deal with the 2015 stuff wherever I go. However, it's a new start. And even if it's just by degrees, I'm grateful for a fresh start, new friends, and a good school for Langston to go to, and Franklin's enjoying college. He's in a fraternity. So that's, it wasn't super exciting when they're doing Rush Week on Zoom, but
what? That's so dumb.
Now that things are actually open and they can throw and do their stuff, I think it's, what he needed in terms of a social life.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of kids got robbed of social interaction.
Yeah.
And the older kids, like you were saying, got robbed of graduation experience and prom experience and Rush Week or whatever. And then the younger kids, I think they got robbed of just learning to interact with other kids, which is a huge part of development and facial recognition and all that stuff. But I'm so tired of talking about COVID. Oh my gosh. So you were mentioning that it's a little bit different and some of the things are going to follow you, I guess, maybe forever. And I wanted to take that opportunity to let you know that your episode of my show, I'm almost at 300 episodes.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. And your episode back in January of 2020 is hands down my wife's number one favorite episode of my show.
Okay.
She loved that you got a chance to tell your story, like without being interrupted, without cutting to commercial, without being argued with, that you had a chance to tell your story. And I didn't say your side, I said your story.
I appreciate that.
So thank you for that. Every time anybody even finds out that you were on my show, because I tell everybody, as you would imagine, the reaction is somewhat mixed. Some people are like, why?
Right.
And then every time before I even get a chance to say anything, if my wife is there, she will say, you should listen to it. And then you can talk about how you feel about it. But since you haven't really heard her tell her story, I think you can shut up.
Well, shout out to the wife. Appreciate her for that. And I think anytime someone experiences that, it's a little glimpse into what I deal with every day, just being me and how people approach me with a real mixed bag. It's either love or hate, essentially. People are either just so consumed with whatever they heard in the media and they can't see anything else. They don't want to hear, sometimes don't even want to hear anything else. They don't have an appetite for reading my book or hearing from somebody else or myself. They just want to keep their conclusions because it works for them in terms of how they've sorted it all out. And then there are the other people who really see the human being, really see beyond and want to hear my full story, want to read my book or want to listen to a podcast like the one you did and hear more. They can see past just the sound bites and the clickbait stuff that came out in 2015. So I appreciate people that are thoughtful like that. For sure.
Well, I think that if the pandemic did nothing else for us, I think what we can take away from it is that the media gets so much shit wrong. I don't know if it's on purpose. Sometimes I feel like it is, or if it's just lazy investigating, or if they're just in a hurry to be first and not right. I don't know what it is, but I think that these last 2.5 years of this pandemic has really shown us, man, they get so much shit wrong.
Yeah.
And if they got so much stuff wrong in that 2 years, what makes us think they haven't been getting stuff wrong for quite some time?
Right. Well, and it's not only some of the misinformation, but it's also picking and choosing what actually gets featured.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, it's the war, Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine. And it's like, what are we not hearing about? You know?
Right.
As an individual who wants to know things, you have to go and find out. You have to go dig sometimes to find, if you're following a story like the one in Minneapolis, or several in Minneapolis, actually, unfortunately, with police brutality issues. There's also like a New Mexico situation with educational curriculum reform, teaching Native histories, 23 tribes in that state being featured in the curriculum from their perspective, as opposed to how the curriculum and history has been taught previous. I mean, like, you don't hear about that kind of stuff. So you have to go dig, you have to go find. And I think a lot of people just either are too tired after work, or just don't want to make that effort. And rightfully so, almost. Like, I feel like we shouldn't have to go dig.
Right.
Media should give us the full menu of news, but I think there's a lot of just cherry picking what's actually even talked about, and then how it's talked about as well.
Agreed. I know from experience that some channels will cover a story, maybe sort of in depth, and then another channel won't even bring that story up.
Right.
So it really sucks that depending on what you're watching or where you're getting your news from, you're either uninformed or misinformed. I don't really think anybody's informed if they're getting their news from anybody without doing their own stuff. But I think your choices are either uninformed or misinformed.
Or maybe like somewhat informed.
There you go.
You can't really fully trust it, but you're kind of reading this, reading that, comparing. My oldest son says he likes to watch news from polar opposite viewpoints, like CNN and Fox, then compare or whatever, just looking up journal articles, podcasts, other things, because again, we have to just realize that the more information we can gather, maybe then we can sort it out and come to some type of an understanding of what's going on in the world. But I think with COVID, as you mentioned, that was the prime example of that, because people were either down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theory or down a rabbit hole of whatever the government says is right, or anti-vax and pro-mask, or pro-vax and anti-mask. It just got really weird for people to be just really adamant about what they believe, so much so that they're going to oppose people that don't agree with their beliefs. And I think that that's where we need to all kind of take a step back and realize that none of us have all the information. So to be compassionate and to be empathetic, dealing with other human beings that may have seen different information than what we saw, and just let everybody sort it out for themselves.
Agreed. And to be fair, I mean, we're all humans. Considering what everybody right now, I guess, is fighting about, kind of a pretty shitty reason to hate somebody. We could find bigger reasons to hate somebody. Come on. Work harder. Find a better reason.
Or just try to not hate people,
Oh, there's that idea.
Maybe there's never a good enough reason. I hope that we're coming to a place where we can sort of sense the need for supporting human rights in a universal way, where we can have compassion for everyone who has a beating heart.
It feels like we're getting there, and it's probably not going to be a smooth road, because it never is with major transitions like that. But it feels like we're headed in that direction. So that's uplifting and encouraging.
Let's hope.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Hey, Streetwalkers. On February 26th, we will release our 400th episode. I want to give each and every one of you a huge thank you for riding with me all the way to this giant mile marker. For the first time since the show started, I'm going to be taking a little break for the month of March. There will be no new episodes, but instead, I'll release an older episode every weekday of the month in a best of style, showcasing some of my wife's favorite conversations. Enjoy these 21 Fascination Street classics Monday through Friday, every weekday in the month of March, and I'll be back with all new episodes beginning April 1st. I couldn't do this without you, so tell a friend, and thanks again for being Streetwalkers.
Let's get back into it.
That's right, Streetwalkers. Ice Shaker is the new sponsor at Fascination Street Podcast. Ice Shaker is made from kitchen-grade stainless steel, so it doesn't smell all funky after you use it a couple of times like those cheap plastic ones. When I'm out and about doing interviews or partying Gronk style, I use the Fascination Street Podcast Edition 26-ounce Flex Ice Shaker cup, and it keeps my drink cold until the sun comes up. You saw Ice Shaker on Shark Tank.
all 5 sharks made an offer, with Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez closing the deal. Now you can get a deal too. Order your own 26-ounce Flex Cup right now at iceshaker.com and use the promo code FSP for $5 off your first order. Once again, that's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Pod, for $5 off your first order. That's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP.
Let's get back into it.
I want to talk about your hair, not the hair on your head,
Yeah.
but you do hair.
Yes. I'm still doing hair.
Okay, good. So how was it to try and build a business there? Like you just moved across the country and had to start over, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So I use Instagram and Style Seat. Style Seat's an app where you can book hair appointments. I just started up on Style Seat. I didn't actually have that when I was in Washington State because I had so many word of mouth appointment connections there. Instagram is great with hashtags, so hashtag Tucson braids or Tucson braiding or things like that. And then people can find you. So it's actually been pretty decent. I have about 200 clients here that I've built up a client base just in a year and a half.
Well done. That's incredible.
Thank you. Also, I have to thank my clients because there are all 5-star reviews on my Style Seat. So I have a lot of pictures of my work, but also clients will leave a review that is glowing and positive about their experience. And that helps a lot because I think I have the highest reviews of any braider in Tucson.
Oh, kick ass.
And so when people go searching on Style Seat for a braider or, weave or whatever, like sometimes they just go with whoever has 5 stars. So sometimes people will come and get their hair done. They have no clue about my name, anything else. They didn't even pay attention to anything except my prices were reasonable and I had a 5-star rating. So they just showed up. So sometimes I get those kind of introductions that are fresh and new. Like I just get to be a regular person.
Oh, how nice.
They're just getting their hair done and we just talk about the world or life and whatever. And that's always fun. And at the same time, I'm kind of in the back of my mind, a little bit cringing, like, okay, what if they leave here and then somebody tells them something and then what? Is the other shoe going to drop? Is this connection going to change? And sometimes it does. And then sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the person. So that's been interesting to watch, like I'm going to get the best quality for the best deal. And that means I'm going to go to Rachel. So I appreciate the clients that don't want to hear anything negative. And I also feel like, I don't want to put this experience on anybody else. So if somebody else gets shamed for getting their hair done by me, that sucks. I know what it's like to be shamed. It just sucks. So I can kind of understand how that shakes out for people. But most of the time, it's a positive experience and they leave a good review. And I have formed a lot of friendships too with my clients, which always happens because doing hair is almost like being a counselor or something. You hear everybody's life story because it's hours of sitting in the hair chair. So that's definitely been great to meet Tucsonians that come get their hair done. That's kind of basically the most of the population I've met in Tucson are my hair clients.
That makes sense.
I get also great recommendations on where to take the kids or, where to go for food or this or that. I hear great things through the grapevine in the hair chair.
Yeah, you get to hear, especially if you're fresh in a city, you get to hear about all different parts of the city and from all different people who,
Right.
like some of that stuff you may have not found after living there for 20 years or whatever.
That's so true.
I think that's really cool.
That's so true. And a lot of my clients say, oh my gosh, where do you meet people in Tucson? I see anybody, I don't meet a lot of people. And I'm like, I've met a lot of people, but that's just because I do hair.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like I can connect people sometimes that have some kind of networking or, like somebody's in Jack and Jill and somebody's, wanting to get in Jack and Jill or whatever it is. And then talk to this person. Or there's a great children's dentist, pediatric dentist here who I braided her daughter's hair and she's won a bunch of dentistry awards and she's, I think, the head of diversity in dentistry, so I might be doing a University of Arizona student's hair who is wanting to go into dentistry. And as a Black female, she's like, I don't know how to make it because it's 7% or whatever. It's a very marginalized group in that industry or in that field. And so I'm like, oh, well, this would be a great mentor for you, So it's just those kinds of connections that I think really are what I'm all about, community building, community development. I'm still kind of doing some of that, even though it's just one individual at a time, and I have Mondays are blocked out for University of Arizona athletes. So I do some of the braids for like the women's basketball team and have made a lot of connections there with the coach and the teammates. I've done hair. So that's cool. For the team, I'm like, I'll just block out Mondays. So you guys, that's your day off in your schedule. So you can come get your hair done on that day.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
As far as that being a great way to make friends, the guy who does my wife's hair, he's been doing her hair for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
And I guess you can see I don't have a whole lot of it, but he's been doing both of my hairs for about the last 7 years or so.
Okay.
The three of us are such good friends. Like he's our third whenever we go anywhere. Like we go out to dinner, we go out to a bar, whatever. He's with us or we're with him, whatever. It's such a close friendship. We go on vacations together. We spend certain holidays together.
Wow.
And to your point, he's having different people sit in his chair all day. So he's the first one to be able to tell us about a new bar or a new restaurant, or there's a new play in some corner of the city that we didn't know about. So to your point, yeah, that's a great way to meet a lot of people and to make a lot of connections and also to learn your new city. I think that's super dope.
Absolutely. And it's also a good way to, in some cases, there are clients that need help, like a little 8-year-old girl, she took scissors to her head and cut off all her hair, like some of it to the scalp, and she was really just going through a sort of self-esteem situation where she didn't like her hair. And
we've all done it. I mean,
a lot of people do it. I mean, she had long hair and it was so heartbreaking, especially for her dad.
Sure.
So her dad's Black, her mom's Mexican, and she wanted straight hair like her mom, and like all her friends at school. And so she cut her hair off, but some of it was like an inch long. And then other parts were like to the scalp. So the dad was freaking out. Like, I don't know. I don't want her to go to school like this. What can we do? So I actually was able to kind of catch some of the patches that still had a little bit of hair and do like a cornrow design into a ponytail. And I did blue and pink hair for her and stuff. And, she loved it and was happy. And I was like, we need to, just get her to be able to celebrate her hair and love her hair again. And of course, she always wanted color in her hair, like the blue and the pink. So the dad didn't want that. I was like, I think you might need to compromise on the color for now. Like, let's first get her to love her hair. So things like that. I mean, that's really where my heart's at, is to uplift and to build people up. I have a lot of women that are, I don't know if I say middle-aged, but postmenopausal women. I was just say that
they're not going to listen. You can say older.
A lot of hair thinning, right? And, issues with alopecia and things like that. And so to be able to help them find a style that is going to make them feel confident and beautiful, that just means the world to me as well, because hair is more than aesthetics. Like, it's also just caring for the person and caring for their confidence and their day-to-day life.
Well, I think that is amazing. And it's a great way to find little spaces where you can be uplifting and be fulfilling, and then also be fulfilled in the way you're able to help.
Right.
I want to talk about your art.
Okay.
Now, I'm always confused at how the camera is oriented on my side and your side. I have no idea. So I'm assuming this is over your right shoulder. Over your right shoulder is a painting. Did you do that?
Yeah. All the art in here is my work. So is that the one that you're...
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a painting of Isaiah when he was little. Over here is another piece that's actually a signed print and some other... Just to show you my whole house. There's a lot of art in here. But anyway, yeah, everything in here is my work.
What kind, I guess this might be a hard question to answer, but how would you describe your art?
So, of course, as you probably know, I don't know if we talked about this in the first interview, but I have a Master of Fine Arts from Howard University, and all my college scholarships were for art. So I basically got tuition scholarships based on my art talent out of high school, and that's what paid for my education, my higher education. I've always created since I was little, since I can remember. I've always been making things. And what really drives my art on a conceptual level are ideas and experiences that I have with the world. And a lot of times my kids show up in my art, my friends show up in my art. I mean, things that I have a personal connection with, either scenery or items that I personally connect with. And then other times it's more of like a social statement or a political statement. Some of that work, may not be as focused on people that I know, but I think my art just has kind of three characteristics. It's revolutionary in the sense of it's always kind of challenging the norm. It's resourceful because I use a lot of found objects like eggshells. The one to my left here, the original was painted on eggshells, like 200 eggshells broken.
Really?
It took like a whole month to piece together.
So did you glue that to a canvas or how did that work?
So the eggshells are adhered with a flexible adhesive, an archival adhesive, onto a gessoed wooden panel. They're rolled out flat so that, like, if a truck drove over the painting or something, like if the shells cracked even further, they would still flex in the adhesive. They would stay, in place. Not that I expect trucks to be rolling over.
I was going to say, what the hell are you doing with your art?
Sometimes things happen when you ship it. So it's actually even more durable than just a canvas, which if it goes in the mail, something punctures through the box, your canvas is done, So it's on a wooden panel. And then I gesso over the tops and sides of all the shells, which gesso is an archival sealant, basically, almost like a primer, but it seals the surface. So that protects the paint. It's like a barrier between the paint and the shell so that the shells are not going to decompose.
Oh, wow.
If and when the shells would decompose after hundreds of years, you could actually peel that painting off and, reapply it to another surface. Because my paintings are in acrylic. And so acrylic paint is basically plastic. So it's like basically a thin film of plastic, whether it's over a canvas or whatever it is over. Anyway, resourcefulness is something that has been really integral to my art process just because I grew up on the side of a mountain, as we talked about last time, with no art supplies. And so I started using things like leather. The piece over here is actually painted on elk hide instead of canvas. So it's a stretched piece of an elk skin, essentially, from the animals that we ate growing up from the mountain.
So in a situation like that, would you personally be the one stretching the skin? Like, are you the stretcher? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I build my stretcher frames out of like 1x4s.
Mm-hmm.
They're thick. And then there's a quarter round. I put a quarter round around the entire frame so that when you stretch it, the quarter round molding actually keeps the hide or canvas up off of those stretcher bars, like off of the 1x4s. So a big piece like that, I would use 1x4s instead of 1x2s. I mean, I could take it off the wall and show you.
Oh, that'd be ridiculous.
If you're really that interested, you can see on the back of it, but it's, just with a staple gun. That's something you learn when you go to school for art. So in undergrad, I learned how to build a canvas stretcher frame, how to stretch your own canvas, prime your own canvas. And then to me, I was like, well, I could stretch a hide too, because they make drums, right? So I could just stretch a hide because that's leather. And
it's all over the place. It's more abundant than canvas.
If you're doing a portrait on actual skin, animal skin is so conducive for a portrait because it's skin-like already. So it paints very beautifully. But yeah, I don't have a ton of, actually you can see over here, just, it's probably a little hard to see, but right above the lamp is a leather sculpture that's actually sculpted out of a deer hide. So resourcefulness is something that is integral to my art anyways. And then I think I definitely work figuratively. So with either friends, family, other people that I see that are inspirational in terms of the visual appeal or something that I'm trying to communicate, whether it's perseverance or whatever. I love to talk about my art. I actually got a cameo request. Cameos usually are shout outs for birthdays or pep talks or other things. But I actually got a cameo a couple of days ago that was asking me to talk about what artists have inspired my work. So that was kind of cool. I was just like, okay, well, let's talk about it. And I talked about Caravaggio and Artemisia Gentileschi from the Baroque period, and also Henry Ossawa Tanner and Jacob Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence actually came to my first art exhibit in Jackson, Mississippi.
Really?
So he's a legend, and that was pretty awesome. But anyway, I don't know how much more you want to talk about art because I could go on forever.
Well, I wish I was more versed in art myself. I just recently, a couple of weeks ago, had on a fine artist. He's a painter and a sculptor like you. Mm-hmm. His name is Sir Daniel Wynn, and he is co-owner of Wynn Slavin Fine Art Galleries in Beverly Hills. And so having just been I'm just a numbskull when it comes to art. I can't draw a straight line and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been super fascinating to speak with him and you about your materials and your different styles and your mediums and all those things. And I know you sell your art.
Right.
As well you should, because it's effing gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah.
Particularly that piece over your shoulder. Holy moly. It is so gorgeous. Where can people go to see more of your art and if they wanted to purchase some of it?
Yeah, so it's really pretty easy. Just myname.com. RachelDolezal.com is my art site. And I actually upgraded it this year to more of a gallery look. So you can look through a gallery of my past work. You can also just go to the shop and shop for originals as well as signed prints. And I also have greeting cards. I also make an art calendar every year. So that's super affordable. It's like $13.99 or $14.99 per calendar, depending on the year. So that's kind of a cool thing to collect, especially around the holidays. That usually comes out in October. And that gives you basically, 12 images of my art that are like on an 8x10 level. And so you could cut one of those out and frame it. If you're a college student or something, or you don't collect art, that's kind of the most affordable way to collect my art is my calendar.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Signed prints are from like $45 to $65. Originals are a few hundred and up, depending on the size.
Sure.
And also, this is something that I haven't yet announced. So this will be the first time we're going to talk about it. But coming soon, probably in a couple of weeks or so, I've been building my NFT page on OpenSea. So I'm going to start dropping some of my art in collections as NFTs. I'm going to drop it in collections of 10. And then the 11th piece will be auctioned off to benefit a nonprofit. And then that'll open up the next collection of 10 and so on.
How cool is that? What a great idea.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
It goes back to that innovativeness you were talking about.
Right. Everyone that buys a first edition NFT will get a signed print of that piece.
Oh, cool.
So you actually get to own the image in real 2D form and live with it.
Just a quick question. You don't have to answer this, and it may be the dumbest question you've ever been asked. But since you have such name recognition, and like you said earlier, it's sort of a mixed bag, how people will respond when they find out your name. Why didn't you change your name?
Well, I did change my name in 2016. So my legal name has been changed for many years. I use my legal name for legal stuff and private personal life. And I keep the Rachel Dolezal as my public name. Kind of like, Alicia Keys is not Alicia Keys, that's just her public name. She has a different, so a lot of celebrities kind of have that where you have your public name and then it gives you the opportunity to kind of separate your public life from your personal life.
That makes sense.
Doesn't always work out that way. And a lot of people are like, why don't you go by Nkechi Jalo, instead of Rachel Dolezal? And I'm like, I would love that. I also don't want any of the haterade or opposition to be associated with my new name. I love my new name because it was given to me from the Igbo tribe and is very sacred and special to me. So I don't want that to be dragged through the mud with all the other crap. So I kind of feel like when I feel publicly more accepted in a sense, maybe I'll make that transition. The other thing, back to the art part, interestingly enough, when I was at Howard University, of course, I had just gotten married. I had moved my maiden name to my middle name. So I was Rachel Dolezal Moore at the time. And someone was trying to get my art on the cover of a magazine and was trying to find me. And it was a little bit hard because my last name had changed to Moore for that 5 years of marriage. But anyway, that kind of made me realize on an art level, it's good to keep your name the same for doing business as, and for the art. So I think I'll probably always keep the art under Rachel Dolezal.
That makes sense. Like Angelina Jolie, she's always been Jolie, no matter who she was married to. And the same with Jennifer Aniston. So, that makes sense. You would just keep it.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors. Let's get back into it.
Out of curiosity, I'm not going to say it, and I don't even know if I could, but the name that I see on your screen, is that the new name?
I don't know if I can't see my name. So I think it's Nkechi, right? Is what you see. You see
That's what I see,
Nkechi.
yeah.
And it looks like Diallo, but Diallo is actually it's a Fulani name. So it's really pronounced Jalo. But yeah, Nkechi is short for Nkechi Nyere, which is an Igbo name that was given to me back in the end of 2015, actually. December 2015 or January 2016. But anyway, I changed my name legally to that in 2016 and have kept that ever since. And it really helps out in terms of even being a mom at PTA or school stuff or whatever. It's not like, oh, Rachel Dolezal, that's going to like set off alarms a lot quicker.
Sure.
So I get to just sometimes be a regular person. And then other times it's like people also know that name because TMZ did a whole blitz on it when I changed my name. And so a lot of people
Of course they did.
were like, oh, that's so offensive that she chose an African name. I did feel like it was a little weird to name myself. And so that's why I accepted the name that was given to me as opposed to just picking a name for myself.
Sure. Do you want me to bleep out where you said your name or should I leave it in?
No, I mean, it's not like Wikipedia and everything.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to make sure.
if you Google one name, the other name comes up.
Gotcha.
So that attachment has already been made. I think it's also in the Netflix documentary they talk about at the end of that documentary.
That they got right.
Right.
Are you still making dolls?
I am not any longer like officially marketing them on my website. I do take some orders from time to time, but I try to kind of streamline my site more towards my fine art for now. I would love to find a way to kind of manufacture the dolls on more of a, so I don't have to like hand sew each one in a whole set of 5. It's a lot of sewing. So I don't make much for my time, but I love it's like my heart is in that project. So at some point, maybe if the NFTs do well or something, I'd have some seed money to get some sets manufactured.
Can you talk a little bit about them? Because I just randomly called them dolls.
That's fine. Yeah. So I make melanin spectrum dolls, and they basically underscore not only representation, like we all want to have a doll or we want our kids to have dolls that look like them, as opposed to a random doll that they don't maybe connect with visually, but it also underscores inclusion. So it's a set of 5 dolls that have 5 different skin tones, and they all have natural hair and different colors of hair. And so it's like somewhere in that spectrum of melanin, you kind of see yourself replicated, but you also see other people that may be around you, because a lot of families have people in the family, an auntie, an uncle, a cousin, a brother, a sister, or whoever that may not match your skin tone. And so how do we visualize families that are now the spectrum of melanin, basically? So for example, my 3 sons are 3 different complexions and have 3 different hair textures. So they're not cookie cutter. They all look identical or, alike in that sense, but they're brothers. And so to be able to celebrate like, oh, this would be my brother over here, and this might be my other brother over here, and then this might be me in the middle, and to be able to kind of play with those. So I also do sets of girl dolls, sets of boy dolls, and then I also do sets that are gender non-binary, basically kind of like just somewhat gender neutral. And that also gives parents options as far as what to pick. And then I do custom dolls just for the representation piece. Sometimes there'll be like a little kid that wears glasses, or, a little girl that has really short hair and maybe likes pink or whatever it is, some characteristics to kind of replicate that little kiddo in the form of a doll. They're little. They're just like 6.5 inches tall, and they're made out of felt. All the materials felt, and then their buttons, and then the natural hair is actually hair that I use for my braiding services as well, like either Marley hair or kinky bulk hair. And I just sew that on. So it's all hand sewn.
Cool.
Yeah. Let me actually mention one other thing about dolls. So the thing that kind of got me started on that, I used to teach Black history and Africana studies. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Mamie and Kenneth Clark doll experiment, but basically that is what turned the tide in the Supreme Court for desegregation. So in Brown versus Board of Education, there was an experiment that they cited that really changed the court's mind about the effects of segregation on children. And that was the doll experiment, where they gave different children dolls, whether they're a white kid, a black kid, light skinned, dark skinned kid. The kids were picking the white dolls. The lightest complexion was being associated with the smartest kid, like point to the smartest kid, pick that, and who's the most beautiful. And so it really revealed this sickness of the standard of white is normal and of white is beautiful and of white is superior. So it kind of like rolled back the mask a little bit to reveal that, okay, white supremacy is actually affecting these kids through segregation. And by keeping them apart in different schools, they see the white schools as the better schools and the black schools as the inferior schools. And this is not something that's healthy for children. And so that was the foundation of the argument that undid segregation. And here we are today. I think dolls are underestimated in their importance in society because of that.
And so that was your inspiration for making your line?
Yeah. I thought, now what? Because black doll versus white doll. Well, now we have families that are this whole spectrum of melanin, all the way, all kind of in between tones and everything. So we need a spectrum set. And a lot of times different skin tones in the same family, like I said.
Yeah. Well, like your client who, she cut her hair. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that between mom, dad, and that little girl, that's 3 different levels of melanin, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, just like right in the same family, just those 3, they're all 3 different. Okay, now, do you have an OnlyFans?
I do.
What do you do on it?
I started that back in the end of September of last year, 2021. I started my OnlyFans because I wanted a platform that I could actually engage with people where I could be supported for my time. And I think, Instagram and Facebook, I just get so many people that want my time and attention and want to talk to me and want to share their stories and want to do this and that. And sometimes it's like a part-time job just to even just respond out of courtesy to people, so sometimes I just don't respond or just give very short responses because I just don't have the capacity as one person doing everything to keep up with it. So my OnlyFans was started for that purpose. And also we were living in another location where Langston was in a school district that was subpar, let's say. That's a nice way to put it. So at the beginning of the school year in August, he was just every week coming home with an injury and being bullied and harassed. He was in an autism secluded classroom. And a lot of the kids in that classroom were older. They were K through 2nd grade, and he was a kindergartner. So he was like one of the littler ones. And he's very cooperative and has had a lot of therapy since his diagnosis at age 2. But a lot of these other kids hadn't had early intervention, and there are a lot of behavioral problems, a lot of aggression towards him. He was being picked on, and I'll spare you all the other details because it makes me really angry to even think about what he was going through. But I basically came to a point where it was unlivable and I needed to move him to another school district. So rent is, a few $100s more in the school district that's much better and much safer. I mean, surprise, surprise, this is America, and gentrification and tax brackets do that. And so sometimes you have to move to a better area to get your kid a quality education. And that's kind of what I had to do for him. So I needed an additional source of income that wasn't super time consuming because I already had plenty going on with hair and art and cameos and YouTube. And that's what I did is I started my OnlyFans, just saying like, maybe I can make that gap for rent every month that way. So it's definitely been a journey. I've discovered that even though OnlyFans started and still is open for anyone, all creators, to create any kind of content they want, most people come there expecting porn. And sometimes it's like really irritating. I want to just like disconnect and not do it anymore. But I'm just kind of digging my heels in and being like, I'm going to do what I'm comfortable doing. So I do fitness videos. I started out kind of doing a mixture of art and hair and feet pictures and like all kind of stuff just to kind of feel out the audience. And feet pictures are so boring to me. So I kind of moved on from that. And now I do a lot of fitness videos. I have been diagnosed 6 months ago with Hashimoto's autoimmune condition, which actually is triggered by chronic stress and trauma. And so it just seems like the last 6.5 years has taken a lot of toll on my body. And I have to be very mindful about my movement, getting in fitness workouts in order to stay healthy, and taking thyroid medication and all kind of stuff. So it's definitely, it sucks. It's hard, but I'm grateful that I know what's going on and I can, learn how to manage it and work with it. So I do the fitness videos. I also do Thursday thoughts. So I do like a little news commentary every Thursday. And for the new year, I'm doing staying healthy Sundays for food meal prep and things like that, and beauty tips Tuesdays. And then on Saturday, I do some lingerie modeling for Rihanna's collection. So Savage X Fenty is her brand. And Rihanna recently said some more nice things about me. It's like the second time she's actually said something nice about me. So I just kind of have a little spot in my heart for her. So I model some of her brand. How that works is that subscribers will actually purchase the lingerie from Savage X Fenty off of my Amazon wish list, or send me a tip in the amount of whatever outfit. And then I get it and model it. It's been going well. It seems to be a big hit for some people.
So does it fill that gap that you were hoping it would with your rent and the move?
Yeah, it does.
Good. I think that, again, with your creativity, everybody thinks that platform is for a specific thing. And I like that you're turning it into whatever you want it to be.
Right.
I think that's really cool.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I've heard from some of the subs too that actually follow other people on OnlyFans, that because I do daily content, that it's a lot more like they feel like they're getting more for their money because I'm doing something every single day. It's actually kind of exhausting. Some days I'm like, I don't want to do this, but but I'm glad for that, because I feel like I have to work a little harder because I'm not doing the explicit stuff,
right? The
porn, whatever. I have to bring a little bit more content.
Hey, but at least you get to keep your dignity.
Exactly. And in the lingerie thing, I think to me, it's just a celebration of the goals and the gains that I have achieved with my fitness. So I feel comfortable sharing that because I am happy with my body progress. It's been a lot. It's a huge challenge. So I feel like celebrating that, and I'm glad that people enjoy it.
Well, I think that's fantastic and good for you.
Thanks.
Rachel Dolezal, thank you so much for taking the time and returning to let us get to know even more about you and get caught up with how you're doing and how your life is going. It seems like things are running, I wouldn't say smoothly, but in the right direction. I think that's awesome. And I'm happy for you. And I just thank you so much for your time again and letting us all get to know a little bit even more about you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was good to be back.
And face to face this time, kind of. So that was cool for me anyway. Sorry you had to look at this the whole time.
No, you're good.
I'm honored that you would take the time to talk to me, not once, but twice. The first time, I couldn't believe that you would trust another person after all that you have been through. And I think we talked about that. And then the second time when I reached out and you were like, you know what, I had a good time. So why not? Thank you so much. I'm honored.
Oh, no problem. I mean, it's like, I'd rather talk to somebody who's a good person, has a big heart, than somebody that is out to get me and throw me under the bus yet again. So that's where I'm at, is I just try to deal with real people. And I am, glad to have crossed paths with you. And I appreciate that you're authentically all about like Fascination Street. It seems like you have a curious mind and you want to really know and you want to learn. And it's not so much like, rah, rah, Rachel, like you're just pumping me up or whatever, but it's like you actually care about information and about details and in real life. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Well, you're going to make me cry, so knock it off. Thank you for that. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.
Opening music is the song FSP Theme, written, performed, and provided by Ambush Vin.
Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jax Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.